Welcome to the beginning of the new series, the top 11 saddest and bittersweet Thomas adaptations. These adaptations have bittersweet endings, heartstring tugging moments, and straight up bummed out feelings by the end of them. They could be completely sad, or they can be sad but sweet towards the end. And that's how this is gonna roll. Why did I choose 11? I really don't know. I just didn't feel like doing 12. Anyways, let's begin with a really awesome story written and told by The Buried Truck and adapted by Shunter Productions. It's called The Tender.
The creation of Great Waterton was complete. Tourists bustled about, eager to see the revival of the old town. Stanley was managing the line well, but Sir Topham Hatt asked Molly to assist with passenger trains. Neville was also assigned to deliver goods for the local merchants. The three engines got on swimmingly. When Molly and Neville first arrived, Stanley was jovial. He always smiled and whistled loudly as he passed. As time went on, Molly noticed a change. Stanley became timid and withdrawn. He didn't speak unless spoken to, and seemed to be almost skittish.
The setting takes place in Great Waterton, operated by Stanley, that's Silver Tank Engine, Molly, the Yellow Locomotive, and Neville. And it opens with our three main characters. This is really a Molly and Stanley focused cast of characters, and I'm liking that we don't really see the original main steam team. This is focusing on a totally separate part of the island, and it's really unique in its atmosphere, and it's very bright and chipper looking, and it's very strange to see Stanley acting weird and kind of skittish among such a bright and cheery environment. This is going to be a good story, I have a feeling.
Goodness, I didn't see you there, Molly. Doing well, are you? I should be asking you the same thing. Is something the matter? Oh, no, nothing at all, Stanley replied hastily. I was just seeing how busy the town is today. Must be off to the water tower. Goodbye. Stanley raced off, leaving a perplexed Molly behind. I don't understand it, she said to Neville that afternoon. He's not the same Stanley who first arrived on the island. I think something's up. Oh, I don't know, Neville answered, rather dismissively. Perhaps he's just adjusting to his new routine. I'm sure running a busy branch line comes with stress. Molly wasn't convinced, but said no more as the two engines went back to work. Neville was late returning to Great Waterton that night. He had to collect building materials from the docks, but the boat from the mainland was delayed. By the time
Neville was late returning to Waterton and night had fallen. He notices Stanley shuffling up and down the sidings like he's looking for something. He accidentally runs into Neville's buffers. After the brief accident, Neville hears a strange puffing noise.
Slowly towards the yard, trying to see through the mist, when suddenly, bump! Stanley appeared from the mist and collided with him. Ouch! Neville cried. Neville? Gasped Stanley. Oh dear, I'm sorry if I woke you. Neville hesitated. In the distance, he thought he could hear a slow puffing sound. What on earth are you doing? He said, turning back to Stanley. I thought I'd forgotten to tidy some of the trucks for you, stuttered Stanley. Silly me. Looks like I did. I'm going back to my shed now.
As Neville explains to Molly what happened with his encounter with Stanley the next morning, the mystery continues, but Molly searches for an answer through Thomas, who discovered Great Waterton in the first place. Thomas tells Molly that there were no engines when he found the old town. He did, however, find an old tender, but that was all. Why does Thomas have a lamp on him in the middle of the daytime? Why is it even turned on? This looks like a modeling error or a mistake, because it wasn't exactly explained that this is, maybe the morning or the afternoon or middle of the day, noontime. But it just seems a little funny that he's got a lamp that is turned on brightly. And this isn't like a little modeling mistake that, you could cover up. It's pretty... And this isn't like a little error that's hard to miss. It kind of catches your eye because, it's glowing. It's bright. It's kind of funny looking. Molly, figuring that the tender is what Stanley's looking for, she decides to make a plan to try and find and recover it. Night falls and she approaches Stanley's shed.
She bravely crept closer and closer, then stopped dead in her tracks. There was Stanley in his shed, and a very old, rusted engine sat beside him. It had an ominous look on its face. Molly wasn't sure if it was the mist, but it was as if she could see right through it. Stanley was pale and quivering as the engine stared him down. "Where is it?" groaned the engine. I don't know," cried Stanley. "I've been searching everywhere." "Where is it?" the engine repeated in a loud growl. "I don't know," Stanley wailed, almost in tears. "But I promise I'll... Stanley!" Molly rushed forwards. Stanley looked even more afraid now. "What on earth is going on? And who is this?" she demanded, eyeing the old engine. Before Stanley could say anything, the old engine began to crawl forwards, its rusted wheels groaning. Molly winced as the engine drew near. "Where is it?" demanded the engine, louder than ever. "I don't know what you're looking for," Molly snapped, trying to sound brave, "but you're not welcome here. Leave Stanley alone and..." Everything stopped as a whistle cut through the air. It was Neville. He was pushing a flatbed with the old tender perched atop it. Neville jumped and braked hard when he saw the old engine. To Molly's surprise, the grimace on the engine's face curled into a smile, and its eyes began twinkling. "You found it," it drawled happily. "Thank you." Without another word, the engine crept slowly towards the flatbed and disappeared into the mist. Out of Neville's cab stepped Sir Topham Hatt, who was most surprised. "Where did you find that tender?" Stanley gasped. "It was mistakenly taken to the scrapyards when the restoration began," replied Sir Topham Hatt. "I had asked that it remain here in honor of him." "But who is he, sir?" asked Neville. "An engine who once worked this line," replied Sir Topham Hatt. "A man who lived in the village told me of its legend. When the line was forced to close, the engine was left behind in hopes that the villagers could find him a new home. I'm told that when they returned to rescue him, he was gone. Only the tender remained. It's believed scrap merchants found him, took him to pieces, and..." Sir Topham Hatt paused to compose himself. "That was that. Many of the surrounding villages claimed they heard whistles and steam after the line closed, but there was never an engine to be found. It seems that engine has been visiting you, Stanley." Everyone turned back to Stanley, who now looked miserable. "I was afraid of him," he sighed. "I thought he was going to hurt me, when all he wanted was his tender, to be a complete engine again." "But you tried to help him, Stanley," Molly smiled. "You showed him kindness, and that speaks volumes about the engine you are." "Hear, hear," cheered Neville. For the first time in days, Stanley smiled. Sir Topham Hatt commissioned a monument at the center of Great Waterton Square. The old tender sat on a plinth, with a plaque to commemorate the legend of the old engine. The other engines can see it from the platform. They all give cheerful whistles as they pass by, but no one whistles louder or longer than Stanley.
What a bittersweet but somber ending. An engine who was left behind only to be taken away by scrap merchants leaving his tender behind. He just wanted to be a whole engine again and is posthumously honored with a statue commemorating him and his life. This was a really good story. It makes you feel sad for the engine. It also makes you feel a little nervous because of his demeanor before the tender shows up and he has his reunion. It's brilliantly written and narrated by the buried truck, and this was truly one of his best performances in terms of narration and voice acting. But let's see how this ranks up. Let's check out the point scale here.
Spin master movie.
This world is very vibrant in its colors and tones during the day sequences. The use of the road vehicles, the presence of people really immerses you into it. That is the very active place. I especially love the camera angles and the panning shots utilized here. The night sequences, I'm going to be a little judgmental about this, but the smoky and grayscale background is a little off-putting, especially when everything else is so detailed. It does make the engines pop out a little more, and the details are really good, but that little grayscale background makes the trees look like they were cut out of paper and just in a solid color. That's the only criticism I have here. I'm gonna give it a solid 9 out of 10. This will be worth 20 points here because the writer for this story is also our narrator and voice actor, and that is the wonderfully talented Buried Truck. He really puts a lot of emotion into his deliveries and equals the narration and voice acting of the characters. It feels really natural and welcoming. He truly feels real here, and it's not just stale reading line for line. He even puts effort into giving each character a unique voice, so for that, it's a 20-pointer here. The characters here are really flushed out and are given a different level of emotions. Those that are key to the story here have a lot of emotion, from Stanley's nervousness to Molly's sleuthing and courageous spirit. The sound effects are awesome. I especially love the subtle sounds to indicate the presence of the ghost engine. They're very hard to catch, but if you do listen closely, you can hear them.
In the distance, he thought he could hear a slow puffing sound.
I especially love the ghostly whistle used for the old engine.
Towards the flatbed and disappeared into the mist.
10 points here too. The music and the cues for suspenseful and even clumsy moments are great. It's a great mix of classic Thomas music, as well as some fun music as we watch the interactions between the characters. But that final piano piece in the third act is what wraps it up all together into a somber but beautiful tone. 10 points here too. And the final score for the tender is a 49 out of 50. This is an excellent start to the new series of reviews. Shunter Productions has really come a long way with his content and his amazing ability to adapt over the years. It really feels professional. A lot of credit goes to the Buried Truck's narration and writing skills here as well. He really sells his own story well with his voice acting and as well with his narration. That's all for this review. I'm sure you can't wait for the next one, so thank you guys for watching.